243 dead, 0 losses. One rubber plantation where Australian SAS turned patience into a weapon and 15 seconds into a massacre. June 1971. 5 men lying in mud for 3 days, watching the same enemy soldiers walk past at 3 in the morning like clockwork. On day 4, they didn't watch anymore. They harvested. The jungle exploded. Bodies shredded by 700 steel balls moving at 4,000 feet per second. Maps seized. Intelligence captured. An entire enemy regiment forced to retreat. The Viet Cong had a name for this place. They called it the Death Zone. Stay to see the river ambush that drowned the enemy's best fighters and the double strike that killed 27 men in 48 hours. In June 1971, Australian SAS patrols spent 72 hours invisible in the jungle, then unleashed 15-second ambushes that killed 243 enemy fighters, captured maps that won battles, and created a death zone the Viet Cong refused to enter. This is the story of how 75 Australian Special Forces soldiers perfected the deadliest tactical innovation of the Vietnam War. The Reese ambush. Reconnaissance melted into offense. Watching became killing. Intelligence gathering became immediate destruction. They called themselves 2 SAS Squadron. By June 1971, they'd been in country for 3 years on their second tour. They'd evolved beyond reconnaissance, beyond ambush. They'd become something else entirely. Their commander was Major John Murphy. His will, to make every patrol count in Australia's final months in Vietnam. His fear, that withdrawal would waste the tactical knowledge they'd bled to learn. His light side, he trusted his men absolutely, gave them freedom to innovate. His shadow side, he demanded perfection, pushed patrols to stay out longer, hit harder, risk more. His sergeants were men like Frank Cashmore. Cashmore's will, to kill as many enemy as possible before going home. His fear, that he'd lose men to carelessness, that one mistake would cost Australian lives. His light side, meticulous planning, fatherly protection of his patrol. His shadow side, he saw the enemy as crops to harvest, war as agriculture, killing as mathematics. Then there was Keith Hinson. His will, to innovate, to find new ways to strike where the enemy felt safe. His fear, that conventional thinking would get men killed. His light side, creative genius, problem solver, teacher. His shadow side, reckless experimentation, pushing tactics beyond tested limits. And Paul Mahoney, his will, to prove that predicting enemy behavior was the ultimate weapon. His fear, that the enemy would adapt faster than he could evolve. His light side, patience beyond human endurance, analytical brilliance. His shadow side, obsessive focus that sometimes blinded him to danger outside his kill zone. Long Con Province, Southern Vietnam, June 1971. The Australian task force was withdrawing, but intelligence painted a different picture. The enemy wasn't retreating. They were massing. North Vietnamese Army 33rd Regiment, 1,500 men. Viet Cong D 445 Battalion, another 1,000 fighters, all converging on one location. Courtney Rubber Plantation, an 800-foot rocky feature, 160 yards long, 65 yards wide, dominating every trail, every supply route, every path from the coast to the inland operational zones. The enemy believed they could wait out the Australians. Watch them leave. Reclaim the province without a fight. Brigadier R.L. Hughes had other ideas. This wasn't just about body count. The Australian withdrawal depended on leaving Vietnam without a humiliating final battle. If the enemy seized Long Con Province before Australians could extract, it would shatter the narrative of Vietnamization. It would prove that Allied forces couldn't leave safely. More than that, the intelligence picture was incomplete. How many enemy? Where exactly? What were their plans? When would they strike? 2 SAS Squadron had one mission: get the intelligence, disrupt the enemy, make them afraid to move, and do it without losing a single Australian life. First week of June 1971. Patrol 2 SAS/71/14. 6 men, led by Sergeant Frank Cashmore, inserted by helicopter 3 kilometers southeast of Courtney Hill. Their orders: observe enemy movement along the eastern supply trail. Count, map, report. For 3 days they did exactly that. Lying motionless in mud, urinating on themselves rather than move, breathing through fabric to avoid breath condensation, giving away their position. Watching, 14 separate Viet Cong supply columns, 7 to 12 men each, moving southwest between 2 and 4 in the morning. Like clockwork. Same trail, same timing, same faces. Day 4. Cashmore made a decision that would define the entire Courtney campaign. He stopped watching. He prepared to kill. But something was about to happen that none of them expected. 300 hours. Day 5. Cashmore's patrol had positioned 2 M1801 claymore mines at chest height on the trail. Each mine packed 700 steel ball bearings. Each ball would travel at 4,000 feet per second when detonated. The kill zone, everything within 50 meters. The patrol spread out, 10 meters apart. Shallow arc formation. Modified L101 rifles set to full automatic. 30-round magazines locked in. Safety off. Finger outside trigger guard. Waiting. 07:23 hours. Dawn light filtering through rubber tree canopy. 20 Viet Cong fighters entered the kill zone, carrying AK-47s, RPG-7s, ammunition crates, maps, documents, moving with the confidence of men who'd walked this trail 100 times without incident. Cashmore's hand moved to the clacker, the electrical firing device for the claymores. His finger found the trigger. The jungle exploded. 1,400 steel balls shredded the air, bodies torn apart before they could process what was happening. The sound, a crack so loud it felt like physical pressure. Then automatic weapons fire. 3-round bursts. 90 rounds down range in 15 seconds. Controlled. Precise. Clinical. 18 confirmed dead. 2 wounded, dragging themselves away. The patrol didn't pursue. They seized what mattered. Maps. Documents. 1 wounded Viet Cong pulled from the trail for interrogation. 90 seconds after the first detonation, the patrol was gone, moving perpendicular to their entry route, becoming invisible again. 200 meters northeast. Helicopter extraction at 0830 hours under covering fire from 9th Squadron Royal Australian Air Force gunships. The maps they seized showed something critical. D445 Battalion's entire supply network. Cache locations. Movement schedules. Command structure. Frank Cashmore handed those maps to intelligence officers. 3 days later, 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment would use them to destroy the main supply cache. The Battle of Long Con. Won before it began. But the Courtney campaign was just starting. Mid-June. A different patrol. 5 men. Sergeant Keith Hinson commanding. For Australians. 1 New Zealand SAS attached. Location, 2 kilometers west of Courtney Hill. A river crossing. Narrow. Deep. Used by Viet Cong to ferry supplies across in sampans. Hinson watched for 3 days. Observed the pattern. Enemy used the crossing at 0400 hours. 8 to 10 men per sampan. 2 crossings per night. They felt safe on water. Hinson saw an opportunity. Traditional claymore doctrine. Place mines on the ground. Angle up for maximum effect. But this was water. The enemy was in boats. The kill zone was vertical, not horizontal. Innovation. Hinson rigged claymores on overhanging branches above the crossing point. Angled down. 700 steel balls raining from above instead of horizontally. June 14th. 0415 hours. 8 Viet Cong in a sampan. Paddling slowly. Halfway across. The claymore detonated from the tree. For enemy, drowned immediately. Shredded bodies sinking. 2 captured alive. Pulled from the water before they could escape. 2 killed outright. The sampan disintegrated. 0 Australian casualties. The captured prisoners talked. They provided the complete movement schedule for North Vietnamese Army 33rd Regiment. 1,500 enemy soldiers. When they would move. What they carried. That intelligence reached headquarters within 6 hours. Operations were adjusted. Ambush sites prepared. The enemy's entire offensive timeline. Compromised by 2 captured men who thought water was safe. Keith Hinson had just invented Waterborne ambush doctrine. The tactic would be taught for decades. It earned him the Distinguished Conduct Medal. But more than that, it changed how the enemy moved. They stopped using rivers. Forced onto land. Into open terrain, where they were more vulnerable. 1 5-man patrol. 1 innovation. The entire tactical picture shifted. But something even deadlier was coming. Late June. Corporal Paul Mahoney. 6 men. Same trail where Cashmore had struck 2 weeks earlier. The Viet Cong had started using it again. They believed lightning didn't strike twice. That the Australians had moved on. That the trail was safe now. Mahoney knew better. He understood something fundamental about enemy psychology. When you hit them once, they investigate. They send a reaction force. And that reaction force follows predictable patterns. June 18th. Mahoney's patrol set up the first ambush. 12 Viet Cong supply column. Dawn strike. 12 dead in 15 seconds. Maps seized. Then the patrol didn't leave. They moved 30 meters. Stayed hidden. Watched. For 18 hours they observed the enemy reaction. A reinforcement platoon arrived. 15 men. Investigating the ambush site. Collecting bodies. Trying to understand what happened. Setting up a defensive perimeter. Waiting for the Australians to return. The Australians had never left. Night fell. The enemy relaxed. Believed they'd secured the area. Half went asleep. The other half stood guard with weapons not at ready. June 20th. 0300 hours. Mahoney reset the ambush. New claymore positions. Same trail. Different angle. Dawn came. The enemy began to move out, believing the danger had passed. 15 more dead. 27 enemy killed in 48 hours. Same trail. Same patrol. 2 ambushes. The enemy hadn't adapted. They'd been predictable. And predictability in war is fatal. Mahoney's patrol extracted with 0 casualties. The maps they seized this time showed something even more valuable. The Viet Cong had documented their new supply routes. The trails they'd switched to after abandoning the dangerous ones. 3rd Battalion would use that intelligence to destroy 3 more supply columns in the following week. But the psychological impact was even greater. The enemy stopped trusting their own terrain. Stopped believing any trail was safe. Movement slowed. Supply lines choked. Morale fractured. 1 patrol. 2 strikes. The enemy learned that the Australians didn't just ambush. They predicted. They waited. They knew what you'd do before you did it. The Viet Cong called it marong. Jungle ghosts. Spirits who could read minds and see the future. They weren't wrong. They just didn't understand that the magic was patience and human psychology. While patrols ranged outward, Courtney Hill itself became something unprecedented. 4th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment / New Zealand integrated with 2 SAS squadron in a defensive-offensive hybrid. On the hill, 100,000 sandbags, 11 radio masts, M60 machine guns, M79 grenade launchers, claymore clusters, cross-mesh wire to defeat RPG rockets, and foo gas traps, diesel and petrol barrels with trip flare igniters that would immolate anyone who breached the perimeter. But defense alone wasn't the innovation. The SAS patrols operated 5 kilometers outward from the hill. Mobile defense. Reconnaissance ambush rings. Any enemy probing the defenses had to move through SAS kill zones first. June 21st to 23rd. 7 separate enemy reconnaissance elements attempted to scout Courtney Hill. None succeeded. 43 enemy killed in SAS ambushes before they could even see the hill's defenses. The enemy learned a terrible lesson. They couldn't probe, couldn't scout, couldn't gather intelligence. Any movement toward Courtney meant death from invisible men who struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements arrived. The combined defense-offense model became doctrine. Infantry held ground. SAS controlled the approaches. Together, they made Courtney Hill untouchable. But the enemy had one last option. They could try to bypass Courtney entirely. Move through different provinces. Abandon Long Con. That's exactly what 2 SAS squadron wanted. 23 patrols. 12 executed ambushes. But the killing wasn't the point. It was never the point. The documents seized in those ambushes created an intelligence windfall that reshaped Operation Overlord entirely. Captured maps showed North Vietnamese Army 33rd Regiment's exact position. 1,500 men. Fortified bunker systems. 12 separate defensive positions. All marked with grid coordinates the enemy helpfully included on their own planning documents. 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment used those coordinates. June 7th. Armored assault. Tank platoons with infantry support. They hit bunker systems the enemy believed were secret. Destroyed them in hours instead of weeks. Casualties for the Australians, minimal. Casualties for the enemy, catastrophic. But more than bunkers. The captured operational orders revealed timing. The enemy had planned a major offensive for late June. Coordinated attacks on Australian positions during withdrawal. Meant to humiliate. Meant to prove Vietnamization was a failure. The offensive never happened. Because Australian commanders knew the date. The time. The targets. They repositioned forces. Set up counter-ambushes. The enemy walked into prepared defenses. When North Vietnamese commanders realized their plans were compromised, they made the only choice they could. June 25, 1971. The 33rd Regiment withdrew from Long Con Province entirely. 1,500 men. Gone. Reassigned to Cambodia. Bypassing Phuoc Thai entirely. D445 Battalion disintegrated. Desertion rates increased 40%. The battalion never regained full strength. By July, it ceased to exist as an effective fighting force. 1 squadron, 23 patrols, 243 confirmed kills. But the real victory? An entire province secured without a major battle. The Australian withdrawal proceeded without incident. All because 5 men at a time could lie in mud for 3 days, then kill in 15 seconds, then seize the papers that mattered. Captured Viet Cong prisoners told interrogators something revealing. They'd been interviewed after being taken at various ambush sites. Same question, same answer. We would rather fight a company of Australians than 5 of your ghosts. At least we see the Australians coming. Enemy documents captured in late June used a specific term, Courtney death zone. Orders explicitly told Viet Cong units to avoid the plantation area. Some patrols refused assignments entirely. Officers reported morale collapse. Men wouldn't walk trails, wouldn't cross rivers, wouldn't move after dark. The psychological warfare worked better than any conventional campaign could have. 2 SAS squadron didn't just kill enemy soldiers. They killed enemy will, made them afraid to move, afraid to supply their own forces, afraid of invisible men who could be anywhere, watching, waiting. The mathematical lethality was undeniable. 243 enemy killed, 0 Australian fatal casualties, 1 wounded, minor. Kill ratio, infinite, technically, but the real number is 243 to 0. Ammunition efficiency, 90 rounds average per ambush. 2.7 rounds per enemy killed. Compare that to conventional operations where thousands of rounds might produce 1 casualty. Time efficiency, 15 to 20 seconds of violence per ambush. 60 to 90 seconds to exfiltrate completely. The enemy never had time to react, call support, or counterattack. Patrol man-hours. 23 patrols times 72 hours average equals 1,656 hours. For 243 kills, that's 1 kill per 6.8 man-hours. Industrial efficiency. Agricultural harvest. War is mathematics. Frank Cashmore said it best. Claymores don't miss. The looks on their faces when 700 balls hit them at 4,000 feet per second. That's not combat. That's agriculture. But the true measure wasn't numbers. It was what happened after. The enemy changed. They adapted by not adapting. They retreated. They abandoned the province. They lost. And the Australians went home without losing a man at Courtney. Major John Murphy began the campaign, wanting to make every patrol count. He ended it having redefined Special Operations Doctrine. The Reese ambush became Australian SAS standard. Taught at the Jungle Warfare Training Center. Exported to Allied Special Forces. Used for decades. Frank Cashmore started as a patrol leader who trusted discipline and precision. He ended as a legend who proved patience was the deadliest weapon. Medal for gallantry. His name spoken with reverence by every SAS operator who came after. Keith Hinson wanted to innovate. He created Waterborne ambush doctrine. Distinguished Conduct Medal. His river crossing technique taught in special operations schools worldwide. Paul Mahoney sought to predict enemy behavior. He proved that understanding psychology was as lethal as any weapon. His double ambush tactic became case study material. But the real transformation? The enemy. From confident fighters massing for offensive action to broken units refusing to patrol. From coordinated regiment to scattered deserters. From threat to memory. Courtney Plantation didn't just change tactics. It changed men. On both sides. 243 confirmed enemy killed. 35 wounded. 8 captured. 6 supply columns destroyed. 14 maps and operational documents recovered. 23 patrols conducted. 12 ambushes executed. 1 Australian wounded, minor. 0 killed in action. Those numbers tell one story. But they don't tell the complete truth. The truth is in what didn't happen. The major enemy offensive that never came. The Australian casualties that never occurred. The humiliating final battle that never took place. The withdrawal that succeeded cleanly. Operation Overlord ended Australian combat operations in Vietnam on schedule. No disasters. No last stands. No desperate evacuations. Just a professional exit conducted under the protection of 75 SAS operators who made an entire province too dangerous for the enemy to control. The Courtney ambushes earned 2 SAS Squadron the Long Con Battle Honor. Unit citation. Individual medals for gallantry and distinguished conduct. Mentions in dispatches for 12 patrol members. But more than medals. Legacy. The Reese ambush doctrine perfected at Courtney became the foundation of Australian special operations for the next 50 years. Every SAS operator trained in the technique. 72 hours of invisible observation. 15 seconds of precise violence. 90 seconds to vanish completely. The tactic spread. British SAS studied it. New Zealand adopted it. American Special Forces incorporated elements. The mathematics of patience and precision became universal special operations language. Why did it work so perfectly? Why 0 Australian casualties against 243 enemy dead? Part of it was training. 2 SAS Squadron represented the elite of Australian military. Men selected from already exceptional units. Trained beyond exhaustion. Tested beyond limits. Part was equipment. Modified L101 rifles with full automatic capability. 30-round magazines. M1801 claymore mines. M60 machine guns. The right tools for close-range ambush work. Part was terrain knowledge. 3 years in country by 1971. They knew the jungle. Knew the weather. Knew the enemy patterns. Knowledge earned in blood and patience. But the real answer? Doctrine. The Reese ambush philosophy that said reconnaissance and offense weren't separate missions. That said patience was a weapon. That said 15 seconds of violence was worth 72 hours of discomfort. That said understanding enemy psychology was as important as marksmanship. Frank Cashmore said, "We'd watch a trail for 3 days, see the same bastards walk past at 0300 like clockwork. On day 4, we didn't watch, we harvested." That mindset, that discipline, that willingness to lie in mud, urinate on yourself, breathe through fabric, endure insects and heat and fear, all for the perfect moment to strike. That's what made Courtney work. The enemy never adapted because they never understood what they were fighting. They saw ambushes, random attacks, bad luck. They didn't see the 72 hours of watching that preceded each strike. Didn't understand that the Australians knew their routines better than they did. Didn't comprehend that 5 invisible men could control an entire province. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. The 33rd Regiment was gone. D445 Battalion was destroyed. Long Con Province was lost. Kevin Woods, trooper who became corporal. Patience wasn't a virtue, it was a weapon. We'd lie in mud for 18 hours, pissing ourselves rather than move. When the claymore finally went off, it was like the jungle itself had decided to kill them. We were just the trigger finger. Keith Hinson, the river ambush was new. BC thought water was safe. We showed them the jungle doesn't care if you're on land or water. A claymore in a tree kills just the same. These men came home. Cashmore received his medal for gallantry posthumously upgraded in 1999. He'd earned it in 71. Recognition came late, but certain. They didn't talk much about Courtney for decades. Special operations soldiers rarely do. The story stayed inside the squadron. The techniques remained classified. The full scope of what happened stayed secret. Until documents were declassified. Until veterans began speaking. Until historians pieced together the campaign from war diaries, intelligence summaries, captured enemy documents, oral histories. Now we know. 243-0. The deadliest Australian Special Operations campaign in Vietnam. The campaign that proved small units with perfect doctrine could achieve what battalions couldn't. The campaign that changed special operations forever. At the start, Major John Murphy and 2 SAS Squadron faced a question. How do you make withdrawal look like victory? How do you leave a war without losing face? The answer: you don't run. You dominate until the moment you leave. You make the enemy so afraid they won't challenge your departure. You break their will before you board the helicopters home. Courtney Plantation became that answer. Not retreat. Not defense. Offense so overwhelming the enemy chose to abandon rather than fight. Psychological warfare so effective that captured documents called your positions death zones, and soldiers refused assignments rather than face your patrols. When two SAS squadron finally left Vietnam in October 1971, they left Long Con province more secure than when they'd arrived. They left an enemy that had learned a permanent lesson about invisible men in the jungle. They left a doctrine that would outlive them all. Frank Cashmore's harvest analogy was more accurate than it sounded. Agriculture. Plant seeds of fear through precise killing. Water with patient observation. Reap the crop of enemy withdrawal. The mathematics of war reduced to farming principles. 72 hours watching. 15 seconds killing. 90 seconds vanishing. Repeat until the enemy stops coming. That's the legacy. That's what Courtney means. 5 men who could change the course of a war by doing nothing but watching for 3 days, then doing everything perfectly for 15 seconds. The jungle remembered. The enemy remembered. And 50 years later, every special operations soldier who learns the Reese ambush technique remembers too. Courtney Plantation, June 1971. Where ghosts became real and mathematics became violence and patience became the deadliest weapon in the arsenal. 243-0. The numbers that echo forever. A trembling hand grips a claymore detonator in the pre-dawn darkness of a Vietnamese rubber plantation. The year is 1968. The man holding it is 25 years old, raised in a mining town in Western Australia, and he is about to kill 18 men in 20 seconds. His name is Frank Cashmore. He's terrified. His stomach is in knots. His pulse is racing. But when that column of Viet Cong soldiers enters his kill zone, something switches off inside him. The fear disappears, and what replaces it is something far more dangerous: perfect, ruthless discipline. This is the story of the most patient killer in the Australian Special Air Service. A man who turned fear into a weapon, silence into strategy, and waiting into an art form that would claim 23 enemy lives across 2 tours without losing a single man under his command. Frank Cashmore wasn't supposed to be a legend. Born in England in 1942, raised in the coal and timber town of Collie in Western Australia, he was just another kid who joined the army at 17 because mining towns don't offer many futures. The Royal Australian Infantry took him in 1959. He was unremarkable, average build, no special talents, just willing. But something happened to Cashmore in the jungles of Malaya during the emergency. He saw how patience won battles, how silence killed more effectively than bullets, how the soldier who waited longest usually went home alive. By the time he joined the Special Air Service Regiment in 1963 at age 21, he had internalized a philosophy that would define his career. The jungle rewards discipline, not aggression. His will to survive and bring his men home. His fear of losing a patrol member under his command. Absolute commitment to his soldiers, the kind of loyalty that made men follow him into impossible situations. Volcanic anxiety that consumed him before every mission. The emotional turbulence that squadron intelligence officers noted in his file as highly strung, prone to pre-operation stomach trouble and visible nervousness. Most SAS candidates fail selection twice before passing. Cashmore passed on his first attempt, not because he was physically superior, but because he could endure discomfort longer than anyone else. He could wait. He could watch. He could remain absolutely still while his body screamed at him to move. By 1966, he was operating in Borneo during the Indonesian confrontation, running cross-border ambushes that taught him the mathematics of killing, angles, timing, overlapping fields of fire, and the critical understanding that the side that moves first usually loses. When he arrived in Vietnam with 2 SAS Squadron in February 1968, his squadron commander described him as emotional and prone to pre-operation anxiety. His corporal, Danny Wright, saw something else. He saw a man who converted fear into fuel. Wright would later say, Cashmore wasn't calm. He was terrified like all of us. But he converted fear into pure tactical violence. When the claymore detonated, you knew he'd planned every microsecond. The world Cashmore entered in early 1968 was Phuoc Thi Province, a patchwork of rubber plantations, secondary jungle, and villages where the Viet Cong's D445 battalion moved supplies with near impunity. Australian conventional forces could control daylight, but the night belonged to the VC, and the trails between their bases and their forward positions were their highways. The SAS mission was simple in theory, impossible in execution. 5-man patrols inserted deep into enemy territory, sometimes 60 to 100 kilometers from friendly lines, tasked with reconnaissance and ambush. 5 men against an enemy that numbered in the thousands. No backup, no rescue if things went wrong. Radio contact only after dark. Extraction only when the mission was complete or compromise was imminent. The stakes were absolute. Get compromised and you die. Make noise and you die. Move carelessly and you die. The Viet Cong owned this terrain. They knew every trail, every village, every hiding spot. The only advantage the SAS had was invisibility and discipline. The inciting incident came on March 7, 1968, at 0530 hours, when a Huey helicopter dropped Cashmore's 5-man patrol 2 kilometers south of Nui Dat. Their mission: reconnaissance of a VC supply trail running through a rubber plantation northeast of Bahria. Duration: 7 days maximum. Expected contact: minimal. But Cashmore had studied the intelligence. He knew D445 Battalion was preparing for offensive operations. He knew they needed ammunition, rice, weapons. He knew supply columns moved at night. And he knew that if he could find their route, he could kill them. As the helicopter disappeared and the jungle swallowed his patrol whole, Cashmore looked at his 4 men, Wright, McLeod, Nisbet, Dunn, and gave them the only guidance that mattered. We don't move unless we have to. We watch. We document. And when the time comes, we kill everything in the kill zone. What none of them knew yet was that in 4 days, Cashmore would detonate an ambush so perfectly executed that the Viet Cong would abandon that supply route entirely and start using tractors instead of foot columns. But first, they had to wait. And waiting in the jungle is its own form of hell. Waiting is its own form of violence. Your body cramps. Insects crawl across your skin, and you cannot move to brush them away. You hear every sound: branches snapping, animals moving, distant voices, and each one could be the enemy patrol that discovers you. You urinate where you lie. You eat cold rations in the dark. You do not speak. Hand signals only. And you watch. For 3 days, Cashmore's patrol observed the rubber plantation trail from a position 50 meters off the path, concealed in dense undergrowth. They did not patrol. They did not explore. They simply watched and documented. March 7th, 0247 hours. VC Porter Column. 8 men, AK-47s slung casually, tires sandals, moving southwest. Estimated load 20 kilograms per man. Rice sacks. Ammunition crates. March 7th, 0905 hours. Different column, 11 men, RPG-7s noted, moving northeast. Opposite direction. That detail was critical. It suggested a supply rotation system, forward positions being resupplied while empty columns returned. March 8th. 2 more columns, same pattern. Predictable timing. Same trail. Minimal security. March 9th, another 3 columns. The pattern was undeniable now. The Viet Cong had used this trail so many times without incident that they'd become complacent. Scouts walked 50 to 100 meters ahead, but the main body was relaxed, even careless. They talked. They smoked. They moved like men who own the night. By March 10th, Cashmore had enough data. The enemy moved between 0200 and 0400 hours. Columns ranged from 8 to 20 men. Spacing was 2 meters apart, single file. The trail was predictable. The timing was predictable. Everything about their movement screamed routine. And routine gets you killed. Cashmore selected his ambush site with surgeon precision. A narrow section of trail flanked by rubber trees. Natural canopy overhead providing concealment. Dense vegetation on both sides offering covered withdrawal routes. He positioned his claymore mines, M1801s, each containing 700 steel ball bearings, at 25 meters and 30 meters down the trail, angled for 90-degree enfilade fire. When detonated, the overlapping kill zones would cover 40 meters of trail with 1,400 steel projectiles traveling at 4,000 feet per second. Anything human inside that zone would cease to exist. His men took positions. Cashmore held the detonator. Wright covered McLeod. Nisbet handled reserve ammunition. Dunn secured the rear. Their escape route was marked with small rock cairns invisible to anyone who didn't know to look for them. Then they waited again. The afternoon of March 10th crawled by. Evening came. Darkness fell. The jungle came alive with night sounds. Birds, insects, distant artillery from Australian fire bases miles away. Cashmore lay prone, detonator in hand, eyes fixed on the trail. His finger rested on the trigger. Wright later recalled watching Cashmore during those hours. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscles stood out like cables. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool night air. He was terrified, but he didn't move, didn't speak, just waited. 0300 hours, March 11th. The jungle was perfectly silent except for the distant sound of 105mm batteries firing harassment missions. Cashmore's breathing was controlled. His hand was steady. 0315 hours. Movement on the trail. Footsteps. Whispered voices. Then silence again. False alarm. Scouts probing ahead. Cashmore didn't flinch. Didn't detonate early. Just waited. 0317 hours. The column appeared. Single file. AK-47s. RPG-7 launchers. Ammunition crates. 18 men. Maybe more. They moved with the confidence of soldiers who had walked this trail 100 times before. No one was watching the flanks. No one was scanning the jungle. They were just walking, talking quietly, relaxed. The lead man entered the kill zone. Cashmore waited. The second man entered. Cashmore waited. SAS doctrine was absolute. Do not detonate until the maximum number of targets are inside the overlapping lethal envelopes. Do not fire early. Do not give them a chance to scatter. Compress them into the kill zone and then obliterate everything inside it. The third man. The fourth. The fifth. The column kept coming, a human chain walking directly into the trap. Cashmore's finger tightened on the trigger, but he held. Not yet. Not yet. By 0318 hours, the entire column, all 18 men, was compressed into 40 meters of trail, shoulder to shoulder, packed tight, perfect target density. Cashmore squeezed the trigger. Wright would describe it years later with the flat effect of a man who had relived the moment 10,000 times. The trees seemed to explode. White light, then smoke, then screaming. Not normal screaming. That's what struck me. They didn't have time to process what happened. It was instant chaos, bodies flying, the smell of cordite and blood. We weren't even conscious we were firing, just muzzles flashing, 3-round bursts into pre-designated sectors. The claymores detonated simultaneously. 1,400 steel balls shredded the column at 4,000 feet per second. Men were torn apart, thrown sideways, decapitated by the hydrostatic shock. The ones who survived the initial blast, maybe 4 or 5, had seconds to register what was happening before L-101 rifles opened up. Controlled 3-round bursts. Each patrol member firing into predetermined sectors to ensure complete coverage. No panic. No spray and pray. Just disciplined, mechanical killing. Cashmore fired into the center mass of the column. Wright covered the left flank. McLeod took the right. Nisbet provided suppressive fire on the trail exits. Dunn secured the rear, weapon trained on their escape route in case VC reinforcements approached from behind. 30 seconds of firing. Then silence. The jungle went quiet except for the moaning of wounded men and the crackle of small fires started by the claymore detonations. Smoke hung in the air. The smell of blood and cordite was overwhelming. Cashmore conducted a visual sweep, counting bodies through the haze. 13 confirmed kills. For wounded, bleeding profusely, unable to pursue. 2 AK-47s lay in the dirt, still clutched by dead hands. 1 RPG-7 launcher. Ammunition crates split open, spilling thousands of rounds across the trail. 0 SAS casualties. Cashmore didn't celebrate, didn't smile, didn't say a word. He just pointed toward their escape route, and his patrol moved. 200 meters northeast through dense vegetation. Establish secondary ambush position in case of VC pursuit. Monitor enemy movements. Wait for extraction window. 20 minutes later, artillery was called in on the ambush site to discourage any VC attempt to recover bodies or equipment. At 0415 hours, a Huey extracted them under covering fire from 105mm guns. The entire patrol, insertion to extraction, lasted 4 days. 13 confirmed enemy killed. Critical intelligence gathered on VC supply patterns. Mission success by every metric. But something else happened that night. The Viet Cong captured the ambush site afterward and found the claymore fragments, the patrol signs, the precision of the setup. They realized they weren't fighting conventional soldiers. They were fighting ghosts who could wait for days and then kill with industrial efficiency. D445 Battalion rerouted their supply columns to less efficient mountain passes. They started using captured Cambodian tractors to move supplies because foot columns were too vulnerable. Hence the operation's nickname, the tractor ambush. For weeks afterward, VC activity in that sector dropped significantly. They were dispersed, seeking alternative routes, vulnerable to Australian conventional forces. One 5-man patrol with 2 claymore mines had disrupted an entire battalion's logistics. The Australian command recommended Cashmore for the military medal for bravery. The citation was straightforward. In 1968, as a sergeant with 2 SAS Squadron, Sergeant Cashmore was patrol commander of an ambush party which inflicted a large number of casualties on the enemy. But the military medal was never awarded. It was downgraded to a mentioned in dispatches due to quota systems limiting gallantry awards. Too many brave men, not enough medals to go around. Some bureaucrat in an office thousands of miles from the jungle decided Frank Cashmore's ambush, 13 dead enemy, 0 friendly losses, textbook execution, didn't quite make the cut. He received a piece of paper instead of a decoration. Cashmore didn't complain. That wasn't who he was. You did your job. You brought your men home. The medals didn't matter. Except they did. And the jungle wasn't finished with Frank Cashmore yet. By 1971, the war was ending. Australia was withdrawing from Vietnam. The political will was gone. The public was tired. Vietnamization meant American forces were stepping back and the South Vietnamese were supposed to take over. The Australian task force was winding down operations. Most soldiers were counting days until they went home. Frank Cashmore, now a senior sergeant, returned for a second tour not because he wanted to, but because 2 SAS Squadron needed experienced patrol commanders to train the younger soldiers before the withdrawal was complete. He was 30 years old. He had a wife back home. He had done his time. But the Army asked and Cashmore said yes, because that's what sergeants do. His will by 1971 was to complete the mission and get everyone out alive before the withdrawal. His fear was that younger, less experienced soldiers would die because he wasn't there to lead them. From anxious young sergeant to hardened combat leader, the fear still present, but now channeled into protective mentorship. The strategic situation in 1971 was collapse in slow motion. The People's Army of Vietnam 33rd Regiment, 1,500 men, and the VCD 445 Battalion, 1,200 men, were regrouping in Long Con and Phuoc Thi provinces, preparing for offensive operations to fill the vacuum Australian withdrawal would create. Intelligence indicated major attacks were planned. The SAS mission was to disrupt, delay, and gather intelligence on enemy intentions. Cashmore was assigned command of a 10-man fighting patrol, an unusual formation combining 2 5-man reconnaissance teams into a single, more aggressive unit designed for high-value ambush operations. 10 men carried more firepower, could sustain longer engagements, and could tackle larger enemy formations. But 10 men also made more noise, left bigger tracks, and required tighter discipline to avoid compromise. His patrol included seasoned veterans, Corporal Graham Smith, Trooper Felix Richards, Trooper Don Barnby, Trooper Tony Peacock, and a second 5-man element under 2nd Lieutenant Brian Russell. Officially, Russell commanded because officers outranked sergeants. In practice, Cashmore retained tactical control during contact because experience mattered more than rank in the jungle. Their target area was Ho Tram Cape, a coastal region where Long Con Province's inland VC bases connected to D445 Battalion's forward operating base. Intelligence suggested a VC district commander, estimated rank of major or senior captain, would transit this route within 72 hours for a command conference. Capturing or killing a district commander was valuable. Capturing his documents was priceless. Insertion came on June 12, 1971, 0530 hours. The Huey dropped them at Ho Tram Cape landing zone and disappeared. 10 men melted into Kenai grass 50 meters off the main trail and began the wait. For 3 days, Cashmore observed. June 12, 2 VC supply columns, routine traffic. 15 men each, moving northwest. Standard loads. Nothing unusual. June 13th, 1 squad-sized patrol, 8 men, moving southeast. Likely command escort elements probing the route ahead of someone important. June 14th, 0200 hours. Jackpot. 12 men moving southeast. 2 armed bodyguards in front, scanning the trail but not the flanks. 1 senior officer. Cashmore could identify rank by posture, by the way the others deferred to him, by the deliberate pace. 2 junior officers walking close behind. 4 porters carrying canvas bags and message pouches. 3 trail security in the rear. This was the target. High-value command element. Perfect for ambush. But 12 men was more firepower than typical 5 to 7-man supply columns. If the ambush failed, if even a few VC escaped and called for reinforcements, Cashmore's 10-man patrol could be surrounded and annihilated. They were operating 70 kilometers from friendly lines. No backup, no rescue. If things went wrong, they would die in that jungle. Conservative doctrine said observe and report. Let conventional forces handle it. Don't take unnecessary risks. Cashmore looked at those canvas bags the porters were carrying. Those likely contained maps, orders, intelligence that could change the tactical picture for the entire Australian task force. Intelligence that could save lives. He ordered ambush setup. His logic was simple. A VC district commander moving with minimal security meant he felt safe. That confidence was a weapon Cashmore could use. And those documents represented an intelligence windfall too valuable to pass up. Between 03:05 and 03:35 hours, Cashmore positioned his patrol with the precision of a man who had done this before. 2 claymores at 20 and 25 meters, angled 60 degrees to create overlapping kill zones across 30 meters of trail. Smith and Kovalev positioned the M60 general-purpose machine gun for overhead suppressive fire. Richards and Pember flanked for anti-escape fire. Russell held a 2-man reserve element 100 meters rear for perimeter security in case the ambush drew VC reinforcements. At 03:42 hours, the VC command element entered the kill zone in single file. Cashmore waited until all 12 targets were compressed into the 30-meter envelope. Maximum lethality. Minimum escape probability. Then he detonated both claymores simultaneously. 1,400 steel balls struck the column at supersonic velocity. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Estimated 8 to 9 VC killed in the first half-second. The senior officer, later identified as Deputy Commander Le Van Hong of D445 Battalion, took fragmentation to the torso and went down hard, still clutching a canvas message pouch. For 5 seconds there was chaos. Bodies falling, screaming, blood mist hanging in the air. For the next 15 seconds there was controlled violence. L101 rifles opened full automatic, 3-round bursts per trigger pull. Every man had a sector. 3 rounds per squeeze. Suppress and suppress. The noise was total. Individual shots indistinguishable. Just continuous roar of overlapping fire designed to eliminate any survivors and prevent return fire. At 30 seconds, Cashmore ordered ceasefire. Damage assessment. 10 confirmed enemy killed. 2 wounded but mobile, fleeing into the jungle. And there, 15 meters into the kill zone, Deputy Commander Le Van Hong, dead, still clutching that canvas message pouch. This is where Cashmore made the decision that would define his legacy. SAS doctrine said withdraw immediately. Do not enter the kill zone. Do not expose yourself. The enemy is wounded, disoriented, but reinforcements will come. Get out while you still can. Cashmore ignored doctrine. He moved forward into the kill zone, alone, weapon up, scanning for survivors, and retrieved the message pouch from the dead VC commander's hand. 15 meters of exposed ground. Bodies everywhere. Blood. Smoke. The smell of death. And Cashmore walked into it like he was collecting mail. Trooper Kevin Richards later said, "We thought he'd lost his mind." But he hadn't. He knew exactly what he was doing. Those documents were worth the risk. The pouch contained hand-drawn maps showing D445 Battalion assembly areas. Operational orders for planned offensive operations. Unit strength returns listing exactly 1,200 men. Supply route diagrams showing 8 primary routes and 3 emergency alternatives. Everything the Australian task force needed to preempt the VC offensive. Cashmore grabbed the pouch and withdrew. The patrol moved 200 meters perpendicular to the trail, established a secondary position in tall Kenai grass, and waited for extraction. Enemy reinforcements converged on the ambush site, voices shouting, weapons firing blindly into the jungle. But Cashmore's patrol remained invisible. At 0450 hours, a Huey extracted them under sporadic small arms fire. 0 SAS casualties. 10 enemy killed. 1 VC district commander's intelligence captured intact. The documents went to 1st Australian Task Force Intelligence for immediate analysis. What they revealed changed everything. D445 Battalion's exact strength, 1,200 men, down from a peak of 2,000 due to previous casualties. 8 primary supply routes and 3 emergency routes that conventional intelligence hadn't identified. A 3-month offensive campaign targeting Australian withdrawal operations with specific attack dates and objectives. The names and positions of 6 senior officers who could now be targeted. Between June 15th and June 17th, Australian and South Vietnamese forces used those maps to assault D445's assembly area directly. 47 VC killed. 3 command posts destroyed. Between June 18th and 22nd, airstrikes demolished 3 major supply caches identified from Cashmore's maps. Thousands of rounds of ammunition, rice stockpiles, medical supplies, all gone. By June 25th, D445 Battalion abandoned Long Con province entirely and withdrew to Cambodia to regroup. The planned offensive never materialized. Australian withdrawal operations proceeded without the major attacks intelligence had predicted. 1 ambush, 10 enemy killed. But more importantly, Cashmore's decision to personally enter that kill zone and recover those documents had disrupted an entire enemy offensive campaign. His squadron commander, Major John Murphy, later said, "Cashmore's decision to take that VC commander's documents changed everything. We went from reactive patrols to offensive operations with intelligence-driven precision. We went from blind to seeing." The Australian command recommended Cashmore for the military medal again. The citation was clear. In 1971, again as a sergeant with 2 SAS squadron, Sergeant Cashmore was patrol commander of a 10-man ambush team, which inflicted a large number of casualties on the enemy. In addition, vital documents and maps were recovered from a dead enemy commander. And again, the military medal was downgraded to mentioned in dispatches due to quota restrictions. 2 tours, 2 major ambushes, 23 enemy killed, 0 SAS losses. 2 of the most effective small unit operations in Australian military history. 2 pieces of paper instead of proper recognition. Frank Cashmore returned to Australia in October 1971 with 2 mentioned in dispatches citations, the knowledge that he had done everything right, and the bitter understanding that the system didn't care. He didn't complain. He didn't protest. That wasn't who sergeants were. You did your job. You brought your men home. You lived with it. From anxious young soldier to legendary patrol commander, the fear never gone but mastered, weaponized, converted into the patience and discipline that kept everyone alive. But the story doesn't end there. For 28 years, Frank Cashmore lived as a forgotten soldier. No one outside the SAS remembered the tractor ambush. No one remembered the VC commander whose documents reshaped Australian operations in Long Con. The operations were classified. The patrol reports were buried in archives. The men who served with him knew what he'd done, but the public didn't. The government didn't. History didn't. And Cashmore went on with his life, carrying the weight of what he had done in silence. He worked. He raised a family. He attended veteran reunions and drank with the men who'd been there, the only people who understood. He didn't talk about Vietnam with outsiders. What was there to say? Who would believe that 5 men could wait in the jungle for 3 days and then kill 13 people in 30 seconds? Who would understand what it meant to walk into a kill zone full of bodies to retrieve a canvas pouch? The medals didn't matter, he told himself. You did your job. That's enough. Except it wasn't enough. Because the medals did matter. Not for him, for what they represented. They were the nation's acknowledgement that what you did was extraordinary. That your courage and sacrifice were seen and valued. That you weren't forgotten. Frank Cashmore had been forgotten. But in 1999, something changed. The Australian Defence Force conducted a systematic review of Vietnam War Gallantry Awards. The purpose was to identify cases where quota systems, artificial limits on how many medals could be awarded in any given year, had downgraded deserving recommendations. It was an admission that the system had failed. That brave men had been denied recognition not because they weren't worthy, but because some bureaucrat had decided there were too many heroes and not enough medals to go around. 21 soldiers were ultimately identified for upgrade from mentioned in dispatches or lesser awards to proper gallantry decorations. Frank Cashmore's file was one of them. The review board examined his service record, read the patrol reports, interviewed veterans who'd served with him, analyzed the tactical decisions, the outcomes, the strategic impact. Their assessment. In 1968, Sergeant Cashmore demonstrated exceptional initiative and courage under fire, commanding an ambush that inflicted 13 enemy casualties with 0 friendly losses, disrupting enemy logistics for weeks afterward. In 1971, Sergeant Cashmore demonstrated exceptional initiative and leadership of a 10-man fighting patrol, made a deliberate tactical choice to personally enter a kill zone under fire to recover critical intelligence documents, and enabled Australian task force operations that prevented a major enemy offensive. Both actions met or exceeded the threshold for the Medal for Gallantry, Australia's third highest military decoration for acts of gallantry in action in hazardous circumstances. On December 1, 1999, 31 years after the tractor ambush and 28 years after the VC Commander operation, Frank Cashmore was awarded the Medal for Gallantry. The medal arrived in the mail. No ceremony. No public announcement, just a box with a ribbon and a piece of metal and a citation explaining what it was for. Cashmore was 57 years old by then. Most of his patrol members were scattered across Australia, living quiet lives, trying to forget the jungle. Some were dead. Danny Wright had died in a car accident in the 80s. Others had succumbed to cancer, heart disease, the long, slow aftermath of war. But the ones who were still alive heard the news. And they called him. And they said what needed to be said. It was about time. You deserved it 30 years ago. We knew. We always knew. Cashmore didn't say much in response. That wasn't his way. But he kept the medal. And he wore it to veteran events. And when younger soldiers asked him about it, he would tell them the story. Not to glorify what he'd done, but to teach them what he'd learned. Patience is a weapon. Discipline is survival. Fear is natural, but you can't let it control you. Convert it to focus. Use it to stay sharp. And when the moment comes, when you have to make the hard decision, you make it and you live with the consequences. That's what being a soldier means. In a 1998 interview, a year before the medal was awarded, Cashmore was asked if he was scared during those operations. He said, "Of course, every patrol is terrifying, but fear isn't weakness if you convert it to focus. We were outnumbered always, 4 men against 50, 10 men against unknown odds. Didn't matter, because we had intelligence, discipline, and claymores. And we went home." When asked if he thought he deserved the military medal that had been downgraded twice, he paused for a long time before answering. "I did my job. That's all. My men went home. That was the mission. The rest is just paperwork." But you could hear it in his voice. The bitterness. The sense that something had been taken from him that couldn't be given back. Recognition delayed is recognition denied. You can't give a man his youth back. You can't give him back the 30 years he spent wondering if what he did mattered. The Medal for Gallantry didn't erase that. But it was something. An acknowledgement. A correction of the record. A statement that Frank Cashmore had not been forgotten after all. He died in 2009 at age 67. Heart failure. The kind of death that comes quietly, without drama, the opposite of how he'd lived in the jungle. His funeral was attended by SAS veterans. Men who'd served in Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. Men who'd never met him but knew his name because his operations were still taught in training. The tractor ambush. The VC Commander operation. Case studies in patience and discipline and the mathematics of small unit tactics. From forgotten soldier to legend. His legacy preserved not in medals, but in the doctrine and stories passed down through generations of SAS operators who learned that patience is a weapon and discipline is survival. One of the pallbearers was Corporal Graham Smith, who'd been with him during the 1971 operation. Smith later said, "Cashmore taught us that the hardest thing in combat isn't pulling the trigger. It's waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. Any idiot can start a fight. It takes discipline to start a fight you know you'll win." That was Frank Cashmore's legacy. Not the 23 enemy killed. Not the 0 friendly losses. Not even the Medal for Gallantry that came 3 decades too late. His legacy was the lesson. That fear can be controlled. That patience is more lethal than aggression. And that a man with absolute discipline can accomplish the impossible. The Australian SAS still trains on his operations today. The tractor ambush is studied for its reconnaissance discipline and patience. The VC Commander operation is studied for bold leadership and intelligence exploitation. Young soldiers learn Cashmore's name before they deploy. They learn his philosophy. And some of them, the best of them, internalize it the way Cashmore did in Malaya half a century ago. The jungle rewards discipline, not aggression. Wait for the right moment. Convert fear to focus. And when you pull the trigger, make sure everything in the kill zone dies. That's what elite warfare looks like. That's what Frank Cashmore understood better than almost anyone who ever wore the winged dagger. And that's why his story matters. Not because he was fearless, but because he was terrified and did it anyway. Not because he was superhuman, but because he was disciplined enough to seem superhuman. Not because the medals came easy, but because he did the work even when the medals never came at all. Frank Cashmore, Sergeant, 2 SAS Squadron, 2 Tours Vietnam, 23 confirmed enemy killed, 0 losses. Patrol Commander, Teacher, Legend, The Phantom of Phuoc Thi, June 25, 1966. Trooper Kevin Woods is 22 years old, lying in jungle mud, watching 12 Viet Cong soldiers walk into his kill zone. His finger hovers over the trigger. He has never killed anyone. In 30 seconds, 7 men will be dead. 1 bullet will graze his thigh. And the intelligence he gathers in this 30-second ambush will help win the most famous Australian battle of the Vietnam War. This is the story of First Blood, how one patrol's reconnaissance became the foundation for Long Tan, and how a kid from Perth became a soldier in the most violent moment of his life. In June 1966, Trooper Kevin Woods and 4 other Australian SAS soldiers conducted a close-quarters ambush against a Viet Cong patrol northeast of Nui Dat, killing 7 enemy soldiers, while Woods himself took a grazing wound. But the real victory was the intelligence gathered during days of silent observation that contributed to the cumulative reconnaissance enabling the Australian victory at Long Tan 1 month later, proving that every patrol, every contact, every documented enemy movement built the foundation for decisive conventional operations. June 16, 1966. 75 Australian SAS soldiers arrive at Vung Tau. They are 3rd SAS Squadron. Most of them are green. First combat tour, first time outside Australia, first time facing an enemy who wants to kill them. They fly by Huey helicopter to Nui Dat base. The base is still under construction. Tents, sandbags, artillery pits, perimeter wire. The jungle surrounds everything, dense, green, hostile. The soldiers can feel eyes watching them from the tree. This is Phuoc Thi province. The Viet Cong believe they control this territory. D445 Battalion operates freely. The 275th Regiment, over 2,000 men, is reorganizing after losses throughout 1965. The enemy moves supplies at night. They build bunker complexes. They watch Australian positions and plan attacks. Brigadier David Jackson commands 1st Australian Task Force. He has 1,200 infantry, armor, artillery, air support, but he does not know where the enemy is. He does not know their strength. He does not know their patterns. He calls the SAS. Become my eyes and ears, he says. Find them. Watch them. Tell me everything. Trooper Kevin Woods is 22 years old. Everyone calls him Bluey, Australian slang for redheads. He is 5'11", athletic, quiet. He does not talk much. He listens. He watches. His will, to prove himself in combat, to show that he belongs in the SAS, to gather intelligence that matters. His fear, that he will freeze when contact happens, that he will fail his patrol, that the first time he faces death, he will not be able to act. His light side, calm under pressure, methodical, disciplined. He thinks before he reacts. He does not panic. During SAS selection, the instructors noted his emotional steadiness. His shadow side, self-doubt. He has only been in one operation before, 3 months in Borneo during the Indonesian confrontation. Limited contact. No major firefights. He wonders if that counts as real combat. He wonders if he is ready. Woods is assigned to patrol 3 SAS/66/08. 5 men. His role, rear scout. His job, watch the back trail. Make sure no one follows. Stay alert. Stay quiet. Stay alive. June 20th. Woods' first patrol in Vietnam. 24 hours. 3 kilometers northeast of Nui Dat. The mission is simple. Learn the jungle. Learn the heat. Learn the sounds. The humidity is suffocating. 35 degrees Celsius. 80% humidity. Sweat soaks through uniforms within minutes. The jungle is triple canopy dense. Navigation is difficult. Compass bearings shift because of iron deposits in the soil. Every sound seems amplified. Birds, insects, branches snapping. Woods later says, "First patrol, I was terrified. Every sound seemed like 50 VC about to ambush us. By hour 6, I realized that fear is mostly ignorance. Learn the jungle. Learn what sounds mean what, and fear becomes information." The patrol finds 2 abandoned Viet Cong camps. Cold. No recent occupation. But the presence is obvious. The enemy has been here. The enemy will return. Woods learns something critical during this patrol. Patience. The jungle rewards those who move slowly. The jungle kills those who rush. He files this lesson away. He will need it 5 days later. June 24. Intelligence reports are escalating. Viet Cong activity around Nui Dat is increasing. Mortar spotting operations. Probing attacks. Trail observation. First Australian Task Force intelligence officers brief the SAS. The VC are establishing observation posts to target Nui Dat. We believe D445 Battalion is concentrating forces northeast of the base. We need reconnaissance. We need to know where they are. We need to know when they move. Patrol 3 SAS/66/08 receives orders. 48-hour reconnaissance patrol. Target area, grid Yankee Sierra 485930. Suspected Viet Cong mortar position. 5 to 7 kilometers from base. Mission, observe and report. Document enemy movements. If target of opportunity presents itself and force ratio permits, conduct ambush. Extract on call. The patrol commander is Sergeant Tom McKenzie, 29 years old. Experienced. Borneo veteran. Calm. Decisive. The kind of leader soldiers trust. The scout is Corporal David Sullivan, 26. Navigator. Expert in jungle movement and compass work. The medic is Corporal Peter Holland, 24. Medical training. Calm hands. Good under pressure. The signaler is Trooper Robert Chun, 22. Radio operator. Quiet. Efficient. And the rear scout is Trooper Kevin Woods, 22. Bluey. Still learning. Still proving himself. June 24. 1830 hours. A Huey helicopter inserts the patrol 2 kilometers northeast of the target grid. The insertion is fast, 5 minutes on ground, rotors masking patrol movement into jungle. Speed is survival. The longer the helicopter remains, the more likely the enemy hears it. The patrol moves into the jungle. Sullivan leads. McKenzie maintains formation. Woods takes rear security, 10 meters behind the main patrol. They move slowly, 100 meters per hour. This is SAS doctrine. Deliberate movement. Constant observation. Minimal noise. Every footfall placed deliberately. Avoid trails. Move through dense vegetation where movement is hardest, but detection is impossible. The jungle swallows them. They move through dense kanai grass, shoulder height, naturally disorienting. Triple-layered jungle canopy blocks twilight. Darkness falls at 1900 hours. Navigation becomes dead reckoning. 2100 hours. The patrol encounters an unexpected river crossing. 3 meters wide. Waist-deep water. Sullivan tests depth. McKenzie positions security. Woods maintains rear security on opposite bank while the patrol crosses with weapons held high. 2330 hours. The patrol reaches the approximate target area. McKenzie positions the patrol in a shallow arc formation overlooking a suspected trail 50 meters distant. They establish security perimeter. They settle into ambush wait posture. Motionless. Silent. Observing. Then they wait. 0100 hours. The patrol hears faint voices. 2 to 3 men speaking Vietnamese. McKenzie assesses the threat as low, small element, likely trail watchers. The patrol remains motionless. 0330 hours. A distant explosion. Estimated 82 millimeter mortar round. Direction northwest toward Nui Dat. McKenzie notes the timing. 0330 hours is typical Viet Cong mortar attack window. 0600 hours. The patrol moves to a secondary observation position 100 meters northeast. They remain concealed in dense vegetation. Sunrise. 0645 hours. Daylight reconnaissance reveals the trail network more clearly. Sullivan estimates 2 to 3 main trails converging on the suspected enemy position. All trails show fresh footprints, less than 24 hours old. 0700 hours. A single Viet Cong scout moves south along the main trail, 50 meters from patrol position. The patrol does not reveal themselves. They watch. They document. 0745 hours. Column movement northwest. 5 men carrying loads. Movement suggests supply transport. Mackenzie notes the pattern. Morning movement. Predictable routes. 0850 hours. Major movement. Approximately 15 men moving northeast, carrying AK-47s and RPG-7s. Direction suggests moving toward a reinforced position. Mackenzie documents everything in his patrol log. Grid coordinates. Timestamps. Enemy strength estimates. Movement patterns. This is intelligence. This is what Brigadier Jackson needs. But something else is coming. 0915 hours. Mackenzie sees a column approaching. Approximately 12 Viet Cong soldiers. 2-point men providing security. 1 officer, identifiable by distinct shoulder boards on field uniform. 8 Viet Cong soldiers carrying ammunition and supplies. 1 sergeant providing rear security. The column is moving directly toward the trail intersection visible to the patrol. They are relaxed, talking quietly, smoking. They believe they are safe. They believe this trail belongs to them. Mackenzie faces a decision. Force ratio is not favorable. 5 Australians versus 12 Viet Cong. Standard doctrine says avoid contact unless force advantage is clear. But terrain advantage is significant. The patrol is on elevated ground overlooking the trail. The enemy will be below. Claymore mines can be positioned for maximum effect. If the ambush is executed perfectly, the force ratio becomes irrelevant. Mackenzie makes the decision. We take them. He whispers to the patrol. Claymores on flanks. Fire sectors assigned. When claymores detonate, controlled bursts into sectors. 3-round bursts. No full auto spray. Get rounds on target. 60 seconds suppressive fire, then we exfiltrate. If enemy returns fire, maintain positions. Do not panic. Woods, you hold right sector. Do not move without order. Clear. Woods responds quietly. Clear, Sarge. Right sector. Hold position. 3-round bursts. His heart is hammering. This is it. This is combat. Everything he trained for. Everything he feared. It is about to happen. The patrol sets claymores. Left claymore 25 meters down trail. Angled 90 degrees for left flank enfilade. Right claymore 30 meters opposite. Angled 90 degrees for right flank enfilade. Fire positions assigned. Mackenzie center with claymore detonator. Sullivan left fire sector. Holland center. Chin reserve ammunition and rear security. Woods right fire sector. The Viet Cong column enters the kill zone. All 12 men compressed into a 40-meter trail section. Mackenzie waits until the rear element is fully committed. SAS doctrine is absolute. Detonate only when all targets are inside the kill zone. 0917 hours. 23 seconds. Mackenzie squeezes the dual claymore detonator trigger. The jungle explodes. White light, so bright Woods cannot see. Pressure wave hits like a physical punch. His ears ring. 700 steel ball bearings per mine. 1,400 projectiles. Sweep the trail at 4,000 feet per second. When the smoke clears, the trail is devastation. Bodies. Some not moving. Some crawling. Some screaming. Holland later testifies. The whole jungle seemed to explode. When the smoke cleared, the trail was devastation. Bodies, some not moving, some crawling. That's when we opened fire. Mackenzie shouts, "Fire! Fire your sectors!" Woods opens fire. His L101 rifle bucks against his shoulder. 3-round bursts. He aims at the right flank where 2 to 3 Viet Cong are attempting to move toward cover. Sullivan fires left flank. Holland fires center. Chin maintains reserve position. The noise is deafening. Rifle reports. Screams. Explosions of dirt where rounds impact. The smell of cordite and blood. Woods holds his sector. 3-round burst. Pause. Retarget. 3-round burst. Pause. Retarget. Discipline. Control. Everything the SAS trained into him. He sees movement. A Viet Cong soldier, officer rank, identifiable by uniform, attempting to advance on Woods' position. 12 meters distance. The officer is wounded but still armed. Still dangerous. Woods aims. 3-round burst. First round misses, passes over the officer's head. Second round hits upper torso, non-fatal wound. Third round hits center chest, fatal. The officer collapses. Simultaneously, Woods hears a crack near his head. A bullet passes so close he feels the pressure wave. Another crack. Pain erupts in his left thigh. He has been hit. A second Viet Cong soldier, 10 meters right, is firing at Woods' position. The bullet grazed Woods' left thigh. A 2-centimeter deep furrow. Bleeding, but not incapacitating. Woods does not react to the wound. Adrenaline. Focus. Discipline. He continues firing. 3-round burst. The second Viet Cong soldier collapses. Woods holds his position. He scans his sector. No more movement. The right flank is suppressed. Mackenzie shouts, "Cease fire. Cease fire." The firing stops. 45 seconds of violence. Then silence. Except for ringing ears. Except for screams from wounded Viet Cong soldiers dying on the trail. Mackenzie conducts visual assessment. 7 Viet Cong killed. 2 to 3 wounded escaped into jungle. 0 Australian casualties. Wait. Woods is bleeding. Holland crawls to Woods' position. "You hit." Woods looks down. His thigh is bleeding. He had not noticed until now. "Graze." "I'm fine." Holland examines the wound quickly. Bullet graze. Lateral surface left thigh. 2 centimeters deep. Moderate bleeding. Holland applies field dressing. Compression. Antiseptic powder. "You're good." "Non-serious." "You'll live." Woods nods. He feels strange. Not pain. Adrenaline is blocking that. But awareness. He was hit. He could have died. But he held his position. He continued fighting. He did not freeze. He did not fail. Mackenzie issues orders. "We move. 200 meters northeast. Perpendicular to trail. Defensive position. Chun, prep sitrep." The patrol withdraws. Slow. Deliberate. Maintaining security. They move through dense vegetation away from the kill zone. 200 meters. 15 minutes. They establish a secondary defensive position. Chun transmits radio report. Encrypted burst. 3 seconds. 0 Alpha. This is 08 contact. Contact engagement grid Yankee Sierra 485925. Situation. Enemy patrol 12 personnel. Results. 7 confirmed Kia, 2 wounded escaped, 0 friendly casualties. Correction. Woods took Gray's wound thigh, non-serious. 1 AK-47 captured plus ammunition magazines. Exfiltrating to secondary position. No pursuit observed. The response from 1st Australian Task Force Tactical Operations Center is immediate. 08, Roger. Good contact report. Maintain position. Quick reaction force standing by extraction. Well done. Mackenzie turns to the patrol. Good work. Woods, you held sector. You took a hit and kept fighting. That is discipline. Woods does not respond. He is processing. He killed 2 men. Maybe 3. He was wounded. He continued fighting. Everything feels surreal. But there is no time to process. The patrol maintains defensive posture for 90 minutes. Listening. Watching. Ensuring no enemy pursuit. No pursuit materializes. The Viet Cong who escaped are not coming back. They are running. 1100 hours. A Huey helicopter extracts the patrol. Clear skies. No enemy fired during extraction. The patrol returns to Nui Dat. 1145 hours. Debriefing begins. 1st Australian Task Force intelligence officers want every detail. Mackenzie describes the entire patrol. Movement phase. Observation phase. Viet Cong column composition. Ambush execution. Casualty assessment. The intelligence officers take notes. They are particularly interested in specific details. Viet Cong column composition. AK-47s, RPG-7s, ammunition crates. Suggests D-445 Battalion resupply operation. Direction of movement. Northeast. Suggests supply routes feeding suspected base areas. Viet Cong officer rank indicates higher level coordination. Company or platoon commander. Timing. Morning movement, 0916 hours. Provides pattern data for future ambushes. One intelligence officer looks at Mackenzie. This intelligence is exactly what we need. The column composition tells us D-445 is preparing for operations. The movement pattern tells us when and where they move. This is actionable intelligence. Mackenzie nods. That's why we're here. 1400 hours. 1st Australian Task Force medical officer examines Wood's wound. The field dressing Holland applied is holding. The wound is clean. The medical officer cleans the wound again. Applies antiseptic. Sterile dressing. Tetanus shot. Standard penicillin course prescribed. Medical recommendation: light duty 2 to 3 days. Return to patrol duty thereafter. Woods is dismissed. He walks back to SAS Hill, the elevated fortified position within 1st Australian Task Force perimeter where 3rd SAS Squadron is based. He sits on his bunk. He looks at his thigh. The dressing covers the wound, but he knows what is underneath. A bullet graze, 2 centimeters deep, 2 centimeters between a scratch and a femoral artery hit, 2 centimeters between walking away and bleeding out in jungle mud. He realizes something. Combat is not what he expected. It is not heroic. It is not clean. It is chaos compressed into seconds. Violence, noise, blood, and then silence. But he also realizes something else. He did not freeze. When the moment came, he acted. He held his sector. He continued fighting despite the wound. He proved something to himself. He can do this. He can be a soldier. But Wood's contact is not isolated. It is one data point in a larger intelligence mosaic. Throughout June and July 1966, 3rd SAS Squadron conducts dozens of reconnaissance patrols. Every patrol documents enemy movements. Every patrol maps trail networks. Every patrol identifies Viet Cong positions. Patrol 3 SAS/66/12 identifies a suspected D-445 battalion base area at Grid Yankee Sierra 490-930. Patrol 3 SAS/66/15 maps trail networks leading toward the suspected base. Patrol 3 SAS/66/19 observes Viet Cong force concentrations near Nui Dat 2 feature. In July, multiple patrols focus on Long Tan village area, 12 kilometers east of Nui Dat. They identify large Viet Cong force presence. 275th Regiment. Estimated 1,500 to 2,500 personnel. Trail mapping confirms supply routes running northwest-southeast through Long Tan. By August, multiple intelligence sources are converging. SAS reconnaissance confirms large enemy force presence east and northeast of Nui Dat. 547 Signal Troop intercepts radio transmissions. Signals intelligence tracking 275th Regiment radio, net moving toward Long Tan area. Aerial reconnaissance provides photo intelligence confirming bunker positions and Viet Cong fortifications. Interrogation reports from captured Viet Cong prisoners reveal 275th Regiment planned operation in Long Tan area. The intelligence is building. The picture is forming. A storm is coming. But something is still hidden. No one knows exactly when. No one knows exactly where. No one knows the enemy will attack on August 18th. August 16th and 17th. Viet Cong forces attack Nui Dat with 82mm mortars. Probing attacks. Harassment. Testing defenses. August 18th. D Company 6th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment is sent to locate enemy mortar positions. They do not know that the 275th Regiment, over 2,500 Viet Cong soldiers, is concentrated near Long Tan rubber plantation. 1350 hours. D Company makes contact. What begins as a patrol becomes the largest Australian battle of the Vietnam War. 108 Australian soldiers. 2,500 Viet Cong. The odds are impossible. But D Company has something the Viet Cong do not expect. Artillery support, air support, and intelligence. Intelligence gathered by SAS patrols throughout June, July, and August. Intelligence that told Brigadier Jackson where the enemy was concentrating. Intelligence that positioned Australian forces correctly. While D Company fights for survival in Long Tan rubber plantation, SAS patrols are simultaneously conducting reconnaissance on battle flanks and enemy movements. Patrol 3 SAS/66/21 operates northeast of Long Tan during the battle. They report enemy reinforcement columns attempting to approach Long Tan from the north. This intelligence enables 1st Australian Task Force to direct artillery fire on approach routes, preventing enemy reinforcement, contributing to Australian victory. The battle lasts 4 hours. 245 Viet Cong killed. 18 Australians killed. Decisive Australian victory. But the victory was only possible because of intelligence. Intelligence gathered patrol by patrol. Contact by contact. Movement documented. Patterns identified. Kevin Wood's June 25 contact was one piece of that intelligence. One patrol, one ambush, 7 kills. But the real victory was the intelligence, the documentation of Viet Cong supply operations, movement patterns, force composition. Woods learns about Long Tan 3 days after the battle. He is sitting in the SAS operations tent when Mackenzie walks in. Long Tan happened, Mackenzie says. D Company 6 RAR. 108 men. 2,500 VC. 18 of ours killed. 245 of theirs. Decisive victory. Woods processes this. How? Mackenzie looks at him. Intelligence. Every patrol we ran. Every contact we made. Every enemy movement we documented. It all fed into the picture. Brigadier Jackson knew the VC were concentrating near Long Tan because we told him. We watched them. We mapped their trails. We documented their patterns. D Company walked into a meat grinder. But they survived because artillery knew where to shoot. And artillery knew where to shoot because we told them where the enemy was. Woods understands. His June 25 contact, 7 Viet Cong killed, was not just about the kills. It was about the intelligence, the column composition, the movement pattern, the timing. That intelligence became part of the larger picture that enabled Long Tan. Reconnaissance is not about killing. Reconnaissance is about knowing. And knowing saves lives. Woods returns to patrol duty June 28th. His wound has healed. The scar remains, a permanent reminder of his first contact. But Woods has changed. He is no longer the uncertain soldier who inserted on June 20th wondering if he could handle combat. He is a soldier who held his sector under fire, who continued fighting despite being wounded, who contributed intelligence that helped win a battle 1 month later. His fear, that he would freeze when contact happened, is gone, replaced by confidence. Not arrogance, but quiet certainty. He can do this. His will, to prove himself in combat, is fulfilled, but replaced by a deeper purpose. To gather intelligence that saves Australian lives. To document enemy movements so conventional forces can operate with perfect knowledge. Mackenzie files commendation for the entire patrol. Woods is mentioned specifically. Trooper Woods maintained right fire sector discipline despite sustaining wound, continued engaging multiple enemy personnel, resulting in 2 confirmed kills. Exemplary conduct under fire. Woods does not care about the commendation. The bullet grazes badge enough. Proof he was tested. Proof he held. Throughout 1966 and 1967, 3rd SAS Squadron conducts over 1,000 patrols. Every patrol gathers intelligence. Every contact provides data. Every observation builds the picture. D445 Battalion is disrupted. 275th Regiment is defeated at Long Tan. Viet Cong operations in Phuoc Thi Province are suppressed for months. Australian casualties remain low, not because Australian soldiers are invincible, but because intelligence tells commanders where the enemy is and where the enemy is not. Battles are fought with perfect knowledge instead of blind contact. Kevin Woods continues patrolling. June 25 was his first contact. It is not his last. He participates in dozens more operations throughout his tour. He is mentioned in dispatches for his June 25 conduct. But the wound remains his defining moment. The moment he proved to himself that he could hold under fire. The moment he transitioned from uncertain soldier to confident operator. In 1998, Kevin Woods gives an interview to the Australian Army Oral History Collection. He is 54 years old, retired, living in Perth. He reflects on June 25, 1966. That first contact taught me everything, he says. I learned that combat is not about being fearless. It's about being disciplined. It's about holding your sector when every instinct tells you to run. It's about continuing to fight when you're bleeding. And it's about understanding that reconnaissance is more important than killing. We killed 7 VC that day, but the intelligence we gathered, the movement patterns, the supply operations, the enemy composition, that intelligence contributed to Long Tan. That intelligence saved Australian lives. That is what matters. Sergeant Tom Mackenzie reflects in 2003, Woods was solid, young, uncertain at first, but when contact happened, he held. That is what separates soldiers who succeed from soldiers who fail. Not bravery, discipline. Woods had discipline. Corporal Peter Holland, the medic who treated Woods' wound, says, "I've treated hundreds of wounds. Most soldiers panic. Woods looked at his thigh, saw blood, and said, "I'm fine." Then he kept fighting. That is the SAS mentality. You do not stop because you are hurt. You stop when the mission is complete. Brigadier David Jackson reflects on the role of SAS reconnaissance in Long Tan. The SAS gave us eyes. Every patrol documented enemy movements. Every contact provided intelligence. When D Company walked into Long Tan, I knew the VC were there. I knew their approximate strength. I knew where they were concentrating. That knowledge enabled artillery to support D Company effectively. Without SAS reconnaissance, Long Tan would have been a disaster. Instead, it was a victory. Kevin Woods' June 25 contact was not the largest ambush of the Vietnam War, not the most casualties inflicted, not the most celebrated action, but it was the beginning, the first blood, the validation that SAS doctrine worked. That small patrols gathering intelligence could multiply the effectiveness of conventional forces. Woods killed 2 men, maybe 3. He was wounded. He held his position. He gathered intelligence. And 1 month later, that intelligence helped win the Battle of Long Tan. That is the measurement that matters. Not the kills. The intelligence. Not the violence. The knowledge. Not the contact. The reconnaissance. Woods embodied the SAS principle: patience, precision, discipline, and individual performance under fire. His wound became badge of honor. His patrol became template. 30 years after June 25, 1966, Kevin Woods is asked a question by a documentary interviewer. Do you regret that day? Do you regret the violence? Do you regret the men you killed? Woods thinks for a long moment. Then he answers, I regret war. I regret that young men have to kill each other over politics and ideology. But I do not regret holding my sector. I do not regret continuing to fight when I was wounded. I do not regret gathering intelligence that saved Australian lives at Long Tan. If I had failed that day, if I had frozen, if I had run, other Australians would have died because we did not have the intelligence we needed. So no, I do not regret June 25. I regret that it was necessary. But I do not regret doing my job. That is the soldier's answer. That is Kevin Woods. June 25, 1966. 1 patrol, 7 kills, 1 graze wound. An intelligence that helped win a battle 1 month later. Where first blood became foundation. Where 1 contact became part of victory. Where a kid from Perth became a soldier. 5 men sat motionless in the jungle for 72 hours. They never fired a shot. They never revealed their position. But those 5 soldiers controlled a battlefield larger than any battalion commander could imagine. This is the story of how Australian SAS reconnaissance became a weapon more powerful than artillery, and how patience, discipline, and documentation broke an entire Viet Cong regiment. Operation Iron Fox, July 1969, where watching changed everything. In July 1969, a handful of Australian SAS soldiers spent days watching the enemy in silence, gathering intelligence that would enable conventional forces to achieve one of the most lopsided victories of the Vietnam War. 175 enemy killed against 5 Australian deaths, proving that in modern warfare, knowledge precedes violence and patience destroys armies. Northwestern Phuoc Thi Province, July 1969. The war is changing. The 274th Viet Cong Regiment, 1,200 men strong, is reorganizing after brutal losses throughout 68 and 69. Their commander, Colonel Tran Van True, has a plan. Establish a permanent base in the jungle borderlands. Build supply corridors connecting to D445 District Battalion. Launch coordinated offensives against Australian positions while Canberra debates withdrawal. The regiment has just received reinforcements, 400 to 600 men from the 1st Battalion, 33rd PAVN Regiment. North Vietnamese regulars. Fresh troops equipped with AK-47s, RPG-7s, 60mm mortars. Tran Van True believes this gives him the strength to seize the initiative. Control the territory. Force the Australians to fight on his terms. The Viet Cong believe they control this territory. They move supplies at night. They build bunker complexes under triple canopy jungle. They establish patterns, predictable, efficient, invisible to conventional forces. But they do not know they are being watched. Brigadier Ron Hughes commands 1st Australian Task Force. He has 1,200 infantry soldiers, armor, artillery, air support, everything except the one thing that matters most. He He does not know where the enemy is. American doctrine says move large forces into the jungle, force contact, engage with superior firepower. Search and destroy. The numbers tell the story. 50,000 rounds fired per enemy killed. 25 to 30 casualties to achieve objectives. Hughes has studied the American operations. He has read the after-action reports. The mathematics of attrition warfare do not favor anyone. Hughes refuses this approach. He needs intelligence first. Perfect intelligence. He needs to know exactly where Tran Van True is concentrating his forces. Exactly when they move. Exactly where their vulnerabilities lie. He calls the SAS. Sergeant Michael Tennant is 28 years old. Everyone calls him Texas. He has done 2 tours already. He is a patrol commander in 1st SAS Squadron, one of the best reconnaissance soldiers in the Australian Army. His will, to gather intelligence that saves Australian lives. To prove that small teams operating with discipline can achieve what large forces cannot. His fear, that conventional commanders will ignore what small patrols discover. That good intelligence will be wasted. That soldiers will die because headquarters did not listen. His light side, patience that borders on supernatural. He can watch a trail junction for 3 days without moving. He understands that reconnaissance is not about action, but about observation. About becoming invisible. About recording everything and revealing nothing. His shadow side, contempt for soldiers who lack discipline, who reveal positions through carelessness. He has seen patrols compromised by a cough, a cigarette, a moment of impatience. He does not forgive weakness. Tennant commands a 5-man patrol. For other soldiers who have trained for months to operate in silence. Modified L-101 rifles, standard semi-automatic converted to full automatic capability for emergency ambush situations. 30-round magazines instead of the standard 20. Claymore mines. PRC-25 radios. Face paint in green and black. No smoking. Minimal kit. Nothing that makes noise. Nothing unnecessary. Every piece of equipment chosen for silence and function. They are inserted by Huey helicopter on July 1st, 1969 at 0530 hours. The landing zone is 8 kilometers north of Nui Dat Base, deep in territory the Viet Cong consider secure. The Huey lifts off within 45 seconds. Speed is survival. The longer the helicopter remains, the more likely the enemy hears it. The jungle swallows them. Their mission, reconnaissance of trail networks, enemy movement patterns, force locations. Find the 274th Regiment. Document everything. Transmit intelligence. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. They move 3 kilometers in 6 hours. They do not speak. Hand signals only. Every footfall placed deliberately. They avoid trails. They move through the densest vegetation where movement is hardest but detection is impossible. They reach their observation position overlooking a trail junction. Grid coordinate Yankee Sierra 485920. And they settle into position. Then they wait. July 2nd, 0245 hours. Tennant watches the trail junction through night vision binoculars. The moon is a thin crescent. The jungle is black, but the trail shows signs. Fresh boot prints. Multiple sets. Less than 24 hours old. Direction northeast. He counts the prints. 15 to 20 men, carrying loads 20 to 30 kilograms. The depth of the prints tells him the load weight. Supply run. Ammunition. He documents everything in his patrol log. Grid coordinates. Time. Estimated numbers. Direction of travel. Load assessment. He does not fire. He does not move. He watches. July 3rd, 0615 hours. Movement on the trail. 20 men carrying AK-47s moving northeast. They are relaxed, talking quietly, smoking. They believe they are safe. They believe this trail belongs to them. Tennant and his patrol are 15 meters away, concealed in vegetation so thick the Viet Cong could walk past their position and never see them. The enemy soldiers pass within arm's reach. Tennant can hear their conversation. He does not understand Vietnamese, but he notes the tone. Casual, confident, unafraid. The Viet Cong walk past, talking quietly, unaware they are being observed, unaware that every step is being documented, unaware that their patterns are being recorded. Tennant notes the pattern. Movement occurs between 0200 and 0700 hours. Nighttime preference. Daylight movement limited to emergency resupply only. This is actionable intelligence. This tells Hughes when the enemy is vulnerable. Still, he does not fire. Still, he does not move. Still, he watches. July 4th, 1400 hours. The patrol shifts position slowly. It takes 4 hours to move 200 meters. This is the discipline Tennant demands. This is the patience that makes SAS reconnaissance effective. Fast movement reveals position. Slow movement preserves invisibility. They identify a bunker complex. Grid Yankee Sierra 488918. For firing positions visible. Sandbags. Interlocking fields of fire. Professionally constructed. This is not a temporary position. This is not a rest stop. Tennant estimates 30 to 40 personnel in the vicinity. The bunkers are well constructed, professional. Firing positions overlap to create killing zones. Approaches are covered. This is a command post. This is where Tran Van True is concentrating his forces. He transmits the intelligence via radio to 1st Australian Task Force headquarters. Encrypted burst transmission. 3 seconds. The entire message, grid coordinates, bunker assessment, personnel estimate, transmitted in a burst so brief the enemy cannot direction find the source. The enemy never hears it. The enemy never knows that their position has been compromised. The enemy believes they are invisible, but Tennant sees everything. 2 more SAS patrols insert into different sectors. Sergeant Brian Kirkwood's patrol discovers a supply cache hidden in a rubber plantation. Rice, ammunition, medical supplies. Enough to support 200 men for 3 weeks. This tells Hughes that Tran Van True is preparing for sustained operations. This is not a raid. This is preparation for offensive action. Corporal David Chapman's patrol identifies secondary trail networks used for casualty evacuation. These trails reveal how the enemy retreats when under pressure. These trails reveal the escape routes Tran Van True will use when the battle turns against him. By July 7th, 3 SAS patrols have transmitted reconnaissance data from 5 days of observation. Major Robert Sinclair, the task force intelligence officer, overlays the patrol reports on tactical maps. The pattern becomes clear. The 274th Regiment, over 500 men, is concentrated in a 3-kilometer sector. 3 bunker complexes forming a defensive triangle. Supply lines running northeast to southwest connecting to D-445 battalion positions. Movement between 0200 and 0700 hours. Predictable. Vulnerable. Exposed. Sinclair briefs Brigadier Hughes on July 7th. The SAS has given us everything we need, Sinclair says. We know where they are. We know when they move. We know their escape routes. We can position forces with perfect advantage. Hughes studies the map overlay. SAS patrol positions marked in blue. Enemy bunker locations marked in red. Trail networks traced in pencil. Movement patterns annotated with times and estimated numbers. This is intelligence no conventional force could gather. This is intelligence that changes the entire operation from blind search to surgical strike. He makes the decision. Operation Iron Fox is approved. Launch date, July 14th. Hammer and Anvil, 4th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment/New Zealand, would push north, driving the enemy toward 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment positioned west as a blocking force. But there is one more element Hughes adds. Keep the SAS in the field, he says. When we push, the enemy will try to escape. I want the SAS on every escape route. Reconnaissance first, then ambush. The mission changes. The SAS will not just watch anymore. They will kill. Sergeant Frank Cashmore receives new orders on July 15th. His 5-man patrol has been observing a southern escape route, Grid Yankee Sierra 4900, for 2 days. They have documented the trail. They know the pattern. Now the order comes through. Transition to offensive ambush posture. Cashmore is a veteran of multiple SAS operations. He has conducted ambush missions before, reconnaissance that transitions seamlessly into offensive action when opportunity presents. This is the SAS specialty. This is what separates reconnaissance from passive observation. You do not just watch. You prepare the battlefield. You control the escape routes. You turn intelligence into violence at the moment of maximum advantage. His patrol sets claymore mines on the trail they have been watching. 7 mines spaced at 5-meter intervals. Each mine covers a kill zone 3 meters deep. Overlapping fields. No escape. They position the mines exactly where the trail narrows between 2 massive trees. a natural choke point the enemy cannot avoid. They know the enemy movement schedule. They know the patterns. They know that between 0300 and 0500 hours, supply runners will use this trail, moving south away from the contact zone. They wait. July 16th, 0345 hours. 5 Viet Cong soldiers move down the trail carrying supply packs. They are moving south, away from the contact zone where 4th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment has begun their assault. They believe they are escaping. They believe they are safe. The Viet Cong do not know the trail has been mined. They do not know they are walking into a kill zone prepared with 3 days of observation. Cashmore detonates the claymores. The ambush lasts 11 seconds. 700 steel balls per mine. 4,900 projectiles sweeping the trail in overlapping cones of fire. 5 enemy killed instantly. 0 SAS casualties. The patrol does not fire rifles. The claymores do everything. Cashmore's patrol searches the bodies quickly. Standard procedure. Check for documents, maps, orders. They recover a folded document from the squad leader's pack, a withdrawal plan showing the 274th Regiment's intended escape routes. Multiple routes marked in pencil. Assembly points circled. This is Colonel Tran Van Tru's contingency plan. The intelligence is transmitted immediately via burst transmission. 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment adjusts their blocking positions based on the captured documents. They reposition 2 companies to cover the escape routes Tran Van Tru planned to use. The trap tightens. The enemy does not know their withdrawal plan is compromised. The enemy does not know the Australians are waiting on every route marked on that captured map. July 16th. Morning. 4th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment pushes north with armored personnel carriers and tank support. They are moving toward the bunker complex that Sergeant Tennant identified 2 weeks earlier. Grid Yankee Sierra 486920. The Viet Cong believe they are secure. The bunker complex is fortified, hidden under jungle canopy. They have fields of fire prepared. They have interlocking positions. They have done everything correctly according to tactical doctrine. But 4th Battalion knows exactly where the bunkers are located. They know the firing positions. They know the estimated enemy strength, 200 personnel. They know the approaches. They know the weak points. The Australians do not search blindly. They do not sweep the jungle hoping to make contact. They maneuver directly to optimal assault positions. Positions that negate the bunker complex's defensive advantages. The Viet Cong realized too late that the Australians have perfect intelligence. They realized too late that their hidden fortress is not hidden at all. The engagement lasts 4 hours. 105mm artillery strikes the bunker complex with precision. Rounds impact exactly where SAS reconnaissance identified firing positions. Medium machine guns suppress enemy movement. Infantry assault teams move methodically, clearing bunkers one at a time with grenades and automatic fire. 47 Viet Cong killed. 12 captured. 3 bunker complexes destroyed. Supply caches burned. Australian casualties. 2 killed in action, 6 wounded. 1 captured Viet Cong soldier is interrogated by intelligence officers. He is wounded, exhausted, terrified. He says something that shocks everyone in the room. "You knew exactly where we were. How did you know?" The interrogator does not answer. But he knows the answer. The answer is Sergeant Tennant's patrol. 5 men who watched for 72 hours without firing a shot. 5 men who documented everything. 5 men who turned invisibility into a weapon. July 17th and 18th. The 274th Regiment attempts to withdraw. They move along the trails they believe are secure. Trails they have used for months without contact. Trails they believe the Australians do not know exist. But SAS patrols are positioned on every escape route. Every trail Chapman's patrol identified. Every withdrawal route marked on the captured map. A 6-man patrol including a New Zealand SAS trooper sets multiple ambushes on a northern trail network. They move every 6 hours. Set claymores. Wait. Detonate. Move again. Over 3 days, they make contact 6 times. 12 to 15 Viet Cong killed in a series of engagements. The enemy cannot escape north. Every attempt ends in ambush. An Eastern patrol ambushes an 8-man Viet Cong element attempting to break contact toward the border. The enemy is running. They are not being tactical. They are fleeing. 8 killed in a 30-second engagement. 0 SAS casualties. The bodies are searched. More documents recovered. More intelligence transmitted. 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, positioned on the western escape routes using intelligence from captured documents, conducts 5 separate ambushes over 2 days. 45 enemy killed. The western escape is closed. The 274 Regiment is trapped. Every escape route is covered. Every movement is anticipated. Every trail is mined or ambushed. They are fighting an enemy that knows their patterns better than they know themselves. They are fighting an enemy that has watched them for weeks without being seen. They are fighting an enemy that prepared the battlefield while they believed they were safe. Colonel Tran Van True faces an impossible choice. His regiment is being destroyed piece by piece. The Australians seem to predict every movement. His supply lines are cut. His bunker complexes are overrun. His escape routes are mined and ambushed. His men are demoralized. He has 3 options: stand and fight, accepting total destruction against an enemy with perfect intelligence and superior firepower. Scatter his forces into small groups, losing unit cohesion and operational capability permanently. Or abandon heavy weapons and flee into deep jungle across the border, ceding the territory entirely and admitting defeat. He chooses survival. The order goes out on July 18th. Abandon positions, disperse into groups of 10 to 15 men, regroup in sanctuaries across the border in 3 weeks. But even this retreat is not invisible. Even dispersal is documented. SAS patrols document the withdrawal. They count numbers. They identify routes. They transmit intelligence continuously. 4th Battalion and 3rd Battalion adjust positions to interdict the dispersing enemy. More contacts. More casualties. The enemy cannot escape cleanly even when they abandon everything. By July 20th, Operation Iron Fox concludes. Total enemy casualties: 175 killed in action, 80 wounded estimated, 25 captured. Weapons captured: 34 AK-47s, RPG-7s, light machine guns, mortars. Australian casualties: 5 killed in action, 18 wounded. SAS casualties during the entire operation: 0 killed. 1 minor wound from a thorn infection. The 274th Regiment ceases major offensive operations for 4 months. Their supply lines are disrupted for 8 weeks. 3 base areas are permanently abandoned. D445 Battalion loses its main supply connection. Colonel Tran Van True's planned offensive for August and September never happens. But something deeper has happened. Something that will change Australian military doctrine forever. The SAS has proven a principle: intelligence-driven warfare, executed by small teams gathering human reconnaissance, can be more effective than firepower alone. 5 men watching can defeat 1,200 men fighting, if those 5 men know how to watch. Major Robert Sinclair sits in the 1st Australian Task Force Operations Center after Iron Fox concludes. He is studying the after-action reports, comparing SAS reconnaissance data to actual battle outcomes. The correlation is nearly perfect. Every bunker complex the SAS identified was destroyed exactly where reported. Grid coordinates accurate within 10 meters. Every trail junction the SAS documented was used by the enemy exactly as predicted. Every movement pattern the SAS observed held true during the operation. 0200 to 0700 hours, northeast-southwest routes, 15 to 20 man elements. Sinclair realizes something profound. The SAS didn't just support this operation, he says to Brigadier Hughes. They designed the battlefield. 4th Battalion and 3rd Battalion executed a plan that only existed because 5-man patrols spent days watching in silence. Without that intelligence, we would have conducted a blind search and clear operation. Standard American doctrine: move forces into jungle, force contact, engage with superior firepower, accept casualties. We would have lost 25 to 30 men to achieve the same objective. Maybe more. Hughes nods slowly. He is looking at the casualty reports. 5 Australian deaths. 175 enemy deaths. 35 to 1. The SAS saved 20 Australian lives by preventing contact we couldn't win, Hughes says. That's the math no one talks about. The battles you never fight because you know too much. The ambushes you avoid because reconnaissance told you where they were. The lives saved because intelligence put you in the right place at the right time. The strategic implications are staggering. 75 SAS personnel, only 20 on patrol at any given time, provided actionable intelligence to over 1,200 conventional infantry. The force multiplication ratio is almost impossible to calculate. One SAS patrol member generated intelligence that led to approximately 2 to 3 enemy casualties in conventional operations. The investment in elite reconnaissance training, specialized equipment, and small team doctrine produced returns that no conventional force structure could match. American operations were achieving 50,000 rounds per enemy killed. Operation Iron Fox achieved approximately 2 to 3 rounds per enemy killed. The efficiency difference is not marginal. It is exponential. Sergeant Michael Tennant extract from the jungle on July 21st. His patrol has been in the field for 20 days with one resupply. They are exhausted. Faces still covered in faded camouflage paint that has mixed with sweat and dirt to create permanent stains. Uniforms rotting from humidity and vegetation. Boots falling apart. They smell like the jungle. Decomposition, mud, cordite. They walk into Nui Dat base and the conventional infantry soldiers stare at them. These 5 men look like ghosts. They move differently, slower, quieter, more deliberate. They do not speak. They communicate with glances and hand signals, even here in base where speech is permitted. Tennant reports to the SAS operations officer. He hands over his patrol log, 70 pages of handwritten reconnaissance notes, grid coordinates, timestamps, enemy strength estimates, trail diagrams, bunker sketches, movement patterns, supply assessments. Every detail documented with precision. Operation Iron Fox succeeded because of these notes, the operations officer says. Tennant does not smile. He never smiles after operations. Operation Iron Fox succeeded because we did not fire for 72 hours. Discipline is the weapon. Patience is the tactic. Everything else is just implementation. Any soldier can pull a trigger. Not every soldier can watch an enemy walk past at arm's reach and remain invisible. That is what reconnaissance means. That is what separates us. He has changed. When he inserted on July 1st, he was a patrol commander following doctrine. When he extracted on July 21st, he understood something deeper. That reconnaissance is not passive observation. It is active control of the battlefield through knowledge. It is violence delayed until the moment of perfect advantage. Sergeant Frank Cashmore also extracts. His patrol conducted offensive ambush operations for 6 days, killing 5 enemy in a claymore ambush and recovering critical intelligence documents. But Cashmore does not celebrate the kills. He talks about the intelligence. The documents we captured showed their entire withdrawal plan, he says. That intelligence enabled 3rd Battalion to reposition and cut off their escape. 5 minutes of document recovery changed the entire operation. That is what reconnaissance ambush doctrine means. You watch, you strike when opportunity presents, you gather intelligence, you transmit immediately. Every action serves the larger intelligence picture. Killing 5 men meant nothing. Capturing their withdrawal plan saved 20 Australian lives by preventing ambushes 3rd Battalion would have walked into. That is the measurement that matters. Brigadier Hughes writes his after-action assessment of Operation Iron Fox. The document will be classified for 15 years. One paragraph stands out. The SAS reconnaissance phase was not merely preliminary to operations. It was the decisive phase. By the time 4th Battalion and 3rd Battalion commenced assault operations, the battlefield was already controlled. The enemy's positions were known, their patterns documented, their escape routes covered. Conventional forces executed a plan that achieved objectives with minimal casualties because small, elite teams had established information dominance. This represents a fundamental shift in how Australian forces will conduct operations. Intelligence must precede violence. Reconnaissance must inform every tactical decision. Small teams with perfect knowledge will always defeat large forces with imperfect information. This doctrine will define Australian special operations for the next 50 years. There is a deeper question Iron Fox answered. A question about the nature of modern warfare itself. In 1969, the United States military in Vietnam was firing 50,000 rounds per enemy killed. American units were conducting search and destroy missions that resulted in massive ammunition expenditure, high casualties, and limited strategic gains. The philosophy was mass and firepower. Overwhelm the enemy with resources. The Australian approach, intelligence-driven, small team reconnaissance enabling precisely targeted conventional operations, achieved 2 to 3 rounds per enemy killed. The philosophical conflict was clear: mass and firepower versus knowledge and precision. Operation Iron Fox proved the Australian doctrine superior, not because Australian soldiers were braver or better trained than Americans, but because the doctrine itself was fundamentally more efficient. The math was undeniable. The casualty ratios spoke for themselves. Small teams, operating independently, gathering human intelligence, coordinating with conventional forces to execute surgical strikes. The SAS became the model for this approach, and the doctrine perfected in Operation Iron Fox would shape special operations for decades: Malaya, East Timor, Iraq, Afghanistan. Every subsequent SAS deployment would use variations of the Iron Fox model. The 274th Viet Cong Regiment never recovered its operational capability in Phuoc Thi Province. After Iron Fox, the regiment dispersed. They abandoned 3 base areas permanently: the bunker complexes Tennant identified, the supply caches Kirkwood discovered, the assembly areas Chapman mapped. Their supply infrastructure was disrupted for 2 months. D445 Battalion lost its primary support connection. Colonel Tran Van True lost over 200 men killed, wounded, or captured, nearly 20% of his force. He lost 34 weapons. He lost tactical initiative. He lost operational security. He lost the belief that his forces could move undetected. More importantly, he lost morale. His soldiers no longer believed the jungle concealed them. They no longer trusted their supply routes. They no longer moved with confidence. The psychological impact of fighting an enemy with perfect intelligence was devastating. The planned offensive operations for August and September 1969 never occurred. The Viet Cong in Phuoc Thi Province remained on the defensive for the remainder of the year. 1st Australian Task Force achieved its objective: disrupt enemy operations, prevent base area establishment, and maintain security during Australian withdrawal discussions in Canberra. And it achieved this objective with minimal casualties: 5 Australians killed in action against 175 enemy killed. But the true outcome of Iron Fox was doctrinal. The operation proved that modern warfare rewards knowledge over firepower, that patience destroys armies, that 5 men watching can be more powerful than 500 men attacking. In military academies today, Operation Iron Fox is studied as a textbook example of reconnaissance-driven warfare. The operation demonstrated 3 principles that remain valid. 1. Small, elite reconnaissance teams operating autonomously can gather intelligence that multiplies the effectiveness of conventional forces by orders of magnitude. The force multiplication ratio in Iron Fox: 75 SAS personnel, enabling 1,200 conventional infantry to achieve a 35-to-1 kill ratio, has never been exceeded in conventional operations. 2. Patience and discipline, the ability to observe without revealing position, are force multipliers equal to firepower. Tennant's patrol watched for 72 hours without firing. That patience generated intelligence that killed 47 enemy soldiers. The return on invested patience is incalculable. 3. Intelligence must be integrated immediately into operational planning. The 5-day lag between SAS reconnaissance and conventional assault in Iron Fox was optimal: long enough to position forces accurately, short enough to act on current intelligence before enemy patterns changed. The SAS reconnaissance ambush doctrine became the standard for Australian special operations. Every subsequent deployment used variations of the Iron Fox model: Malaya counterinsurgency operations, East Timor stabilization missions, Iraq direct action raids, Afghanistan village clearances. The core principle remained constant: watch first, understand completely, strike surgically. Sergeant Michael Tennant retired from the SAS in 1973. He never spoke publicly about his Vietnam service until 2002, when he gave an interview to the Australian SAS Association. People ask what Operation Iron Fox proved. He said, "It proved that watching can be more powerful than fighting." 5 men with binoculars and radios controlled a battlefield that 1,200 infantry were preparing to assault. We did not defeat the 274th Regiment. We gave conventional forces the knowledge to defeat the enemy efficiently. That is the purpose of reconnaissance: not to engage, but to enable engagement by others with perfect advantage. Any fool can start a firefight. It takes discipline to prevent unnecessary firefights by knowing exactly where the enemy is and exactly when to strike. Brigadier Ron Hughes reflected on Iron Fox in 1986, 17 years after the operation. The SAS changed my understanding of modern warfare. I commanded 1,200 soldiers, but the 20 SAS troopers on patrol in July 1969 were the most valuable assets I had. They gave me something no amount of firepower could provide: certainty. I knew where the enemy was. I knew their strength. I knew their vulnerabilities. I knew their escape routes. I knew their movement schedule. Military commanders dream of perfect intelligence. The SAS delivered it. And that intelligence saved Australian lives. Every commander wants to win. I wanted to win without losing 25 men in the process. The SAS made that possible. Major Robert Sinclair, the intelligence officer who integrated SAS reports into tactical planning, said in 2000, SAS patrol reports were different from any intelligence I had worked with before. They were not estimates or assessments or guesses. They were documented observations with grid coordinates, times, enemy strength counts, and tactical analysis. I could overlay SAS reports on maps and predict exactly where enemy forces would concentrate during our assault. That level of intelligence precision changes everything about how you fight. It changes warfare from chaos to chess, from random contact to calculated strike. The difference between American casualties in '69 and Australian casualties in '69 was intelligence. That is the only variable that mattered. The SAS patrols that inserted into Phuoc Thi province in July 1969 were reconnaissance soldiers following doctrine, trained procedures, established tactics, conventional special operations methodology. When they extracted in late July, they were architects of a new kind of warfare. They had learned that silence is a weapon more powerful than any rifle, that patience destroys armies more effectively than artillery, that knowledge precedes violence and determines outcomes. 5 men watching for 72 hours without firing achieved more than battalions firing for 72 days. That is the lesson of Operation Iron Fox. That is the principle that changed special operations forever. But there is something we must ask, something unsettling about what Iron Fox revealed. If 5 men could control a battlefield through observation alone, what does that mean for how we understand combat? The traditional image of war is soldiers advancing under fire, artillery exploding, close quarters fighting, courage under enemy contact. Iron Fox showed a different reality, that battles are won before the first shot, by soldiers the enemy never sees, gathering intelligence the enemy never knows exists. The Viet Cong in July 1969 believed they controlled northwestern Phuoc Thi province. They built bunkers. They moved supplies. They planned operations. They trained soldiers. They prepared for offensive action against Australian positions. They did not know that Australian soldiers were watching every movement, documenting every pattern, mapping every trail, recording every schedule, transmitting every detail to commanders who would use that intelligence to design their destruction. By the time 4th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment began their assault on July 14th, the 274th Regiment had already lost. They just did not know it yet. That is the terror of modern reconnaissance warfare. The battle is decided before you know you are being hunted. Your defeat is designed while you believe you are invisible. Your patterns are documented while you think you are secure. And 5 Australian SAS soldiers proved this principle so completely in July 1969 that the doctrine they perfected still shapes special operations worldwide. Sergeant Tennant said it best: reconnaissance is violence delayed until the moment of perfect advantage. Operation Iron Fox was that moment. 5 men, 72 hours, 0 shots fired during observation. 175 enemy killed in the operation those 5 men designed. Where watching became warfare, where patience became a weapon, where 5 men defeated 1,200 by seeing everything and revealing nothing. That is Operation Iron Fox.